Recap of Chapter 6, One Crazy Summer. Here's what we know so far. Delphine called Big Ma and Pa Collect to inform them that they arrived safely to Oakland, California. When Delphine and her sisters arrived from Ming's, Cecile had set up a waxy tablecloth on the floor for them to have dinner. While waiting for Cecile to return from the kitchen, Delphine and her sisters were startled by the knock on the door. Cecile rushed the girls to their room. So here's our teaching point. Readers will pay attention to character traits, relationships, the point of view of the narrator, possible themes, as well as any changes to the story elements. So we want to keep these lenses in mind as we are reading. Chapter 7, For the People. We were trained spies back in Brooklyn, scrunched together, pressing our ears to the door, wall, or air. We used hand signals and mouth words instead of whispered. If necessary, I could shush my sisters with a glare to bottle up their loose giggling. You can't giggle and be a spy. So I am going to stop here because I noticed that the author is including a flashback to provide some background information. So I know this is a flashback because it mentions that the girls did this when they were back in Brooklyn. And this story is taking place in Oakland, California. So you have to be alert when you're reading because time shifts in the story. Sometimes it's a flashback or a flash forward. Okay. It was by pressing our ears to the air that we had heard Pa say, "No, Ma. They need to know her, and she needs to know them. They're flying to Oakland. That's final." It had been all we could do not to let on when Pa sat us down the next morning. So let me stop here again because I'm noticing two things. Did the girls eavesdrop often to adult conversations to get information about what's happening? Okay, so they do this often. So this is good to just kind of remember as we read on that the girls listen to adult conversations. Also, I noticed character work here when Big Ma didn't want the girls to go, and we know that Big Ma is this very firm, strict character in our book, right? But here we see that Pa remained firm on his decision, right, of sending the girls to their mother. So that was a big moment here. Okay, let's continue. The knock on the door, Cecile ordering us to hide, and her clearing away all evidence of us were not actions of a mother. They were actions of a secret agent or a fugitive from justice, someone who doesn't want her door wide open and welcoming like Big Ma does when the doorbell rings. Hers were the actions of someone who wears hats, scarves, shades to keep from being recognized. Kind of like the guy in the phone booth. Someone obviously hiding out. So I'm gonna stop here because I'm noticing that Delphine's point of view is like she's very observant of her mother's actions, right? She's like paying attention to what her mom is doing because she knows that she's hiding something about who she is. So paying attention to characters' actions could tell us a lot about them and who they are. Once again, we fell into our spying positions, angling ourselves at the cracked door to see. while pressing our ears against the ear. From there, we could see pieces of the three figures who entered Cecile's house. All wore dark colors. One had a black jacket and a black beret. The other two, black t-shirts and a black berets over afros. We steadied our heavy, exciting breathing to what we could hear. It was long after greeting one another that their talking turned to argument. It was their voices, all three of them against hers. It sounded like, "Seize the time for the people. Now the time is now," versus hers. "Me, mine, no, no." Then each one of them firing off, "The people, the people, the people," against her. "My art, my work, my time, my materials, my printing press. Me, mine, no, no." So now in this part, we see that the author is adding some dialogue for us, the readers, to understand who's talking, right? This is a conversation between four people. So we see that the author is adding some dialogue for us to learn about what's happening. And the author is also adding suspense. Like, what are they talking about? It's not really clear, right? So the author is building our suspense. Like, we really want to find out what's happening. I was sure they were Black Panthers. They were on the news a lot lately. The Panthers on TV said that they were in communities to protect poor Black people from the powerful, to provide things like food, clothes, and medical help, and to fight racism. Even so, most people were afraid of Black Panthers because they carried rifles and shouted, "Black Power!" From what I can see, these three didn't have rifles, and Cecile did not seem afraid. Just annoyed because they wanted her things, but she didn't want to give them. Big Ma said God could not have made a being more selfish than Cecile. At least she was like that with everyone, not just to us. So I'm gonna stop here because now we're noticing that Cecile is doing some Delphine is doing some inner thinking about what's happening between Cecile and the Black Panthers that were in her house, these three visitors. And we learn from Delphine's inner thinking that she knows who the Black Panthers are and what they do. And she's heard this from the TV, okay? So she knows who the Black Panthers are. Cecile said, "Paper isn't free. Ink isn't free. My printing press isn't free. I'm not free." One of them answered, "None of us is free, Sister Inzilla. Edridge Clever isn't free. Huey Newton isn't free. H. Rap Brown isn't free. Muhammad Ali isn't free." I knew he meant her, Cecile, when he said Inzilla. I didn't know some of those other names. Only Huey Newton, the Black Panther leader, and Muhammad Ali, who used to be Cassius Clay. I guess the others were Black Panthers or Black people who were in prison. I knew Ali had refused to go to Vietnam and fight like Uncle Darnell was doing. I still didn't get what any of that had to do with Cecile. So let's stop there. The reader learns facts by listening to Delphine's inner thinking. The reader learns facts about who and what the Black Panthers did for Black communities, okay? Here again, we see that Delphine is listening in and learns about Cecile, who she is, and I'm thinking, is she part of the Black Panthers? Let's kind of keep that in mind. Okay. Another one said, "That's why everyone must contribute to the cause." The third voice added, "Like Huey said, we should all carry the weight, and those who have extreme abilities will have to carry extremely heavy loads." There were words thrown back and forth, long, unfamiliar words ending in isms and antics, with more talk about the people thrown in for good measure, like Big Ma throwing a pinch of salt into the cake batter. They weren't just talking. The three Black Panthers were rapping, laying it down, telling it like it is, like talking was their weapon, their words versus hers, her words. Hers falling, theirs rising. When her voice fell as low as she would allow it, she stamped her foot and said, all right, but you gotta take my kids." And shortly after they were gone, we retreated from the door and jumped on the top daybed. This was the next part. This was the next part after the spy mission, pulling together what we've learned. So, here we learn that Cecile is hesitant about working with the Black Panther, right? She doesn't want to do this, and they're having this conversation where it goes back and forth. At first, I thought that she was being selfish, like Big Ma had mentioned earlier, but then I realized that she thought it could be dangerous. Maybe that's why she's asking if she could take Delphine and her sisters, right? She asked the Black Panthers if they could take Delphine and the sisters. So, gotta pay attention to that. Could this task that they're asking Cecile to do be dangerous? Okay, let's continue. Vanetta asked, "Is she giving us away?" Then Fern, "To those people?" I shook my head. No. She couldn't explain that to Papa or Big Ma, Fern said. "Then who are those people?" Vanetta asked. "In the black clothes?" Telling her to carry the weight, talking on and on and on, Fern said. "They're Black Panthers. They're probably who she's running from," Vanetta asked. "Who are the Black Panthers?" "You know, like Frida's brother." I made the black power sign with my fist. "Only Big Ma and I watch the news. Big Ma enjoys hearing about all the trouble going on in the world. It isn't that she actually likes it. She just needs to hear about everything and talk about it. Since Pa works all day and is tired at night, Big Ma gives me her opinion while I wash the dishes. You name it. President LBJ, Ho Chi Minh in North Vietnam, Martin Luther King's funeral, Bobby Kennedy's funeral, the race riots, the sit-ins, Elizabeth Taylor's next husband, the Black Panthers, each hold Big Mama's interest." "It has something to do with Cecile's paper," I said. "And her ink," Vanetta said. "And the people," Fern said. We couldn't imagine what ties all three things together. Then Vanetta suggested maybe they want her to write a poem about the people, Fern says. "Using her special ink and papers," Vanetta said. So here we see the problem. Delphine, Vanetta, and Fern are trying to figure out, what do the Black Panthers want Cecile to do? They believe it has to do with her writing the poem. So let's kind of keep that in the back of our heads. Is this what they want her to do? Could this be the dangerous thing that they want her to do? Pa had told us Cecile wrote poems, but I had already known that. Flashes of Cecile chanting words, tapping a rhythm with her pencil, then writing. And Uncle Darnell has said that I was always there, quiet in the kitchen while she chanted, tapping and wrote. I get those flashing pictures, but in pieces. Vanetta asked, "Can they make you write poems?" Then Vanetta fixed her voice deep like a man. "You better write a poem about the people or else." Fern and I laughed at her. She loved entertaining us. So this part right here shows how close the sisters are. They don't have any secrets. So they're laughing and they know one another really well. Okay, let's continue. They don't send the Black Panthers to your house to make you write poems, I said. Vanetta's eyes lit up fire bright. She had an idea. Cecile prints up her own money. How else do you think she got this house? Cecile is printing her own money in the kitchen. That's why we can't go in there. That's why she didn't cook fried chicken or Nana's pudding. I shook my head. With all the money she have to print up to buy this house, the FBI would have cracked her down and thrown her in the pokey. The pokey? That made Fern laugh. Then Vanetta and Fern started dancing and singing. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Okay, for the people. So let's summarize. So who was in this chapter? So make sure that you have your notebook, and I want you to kind of pause the video here. Who was in this chapter? What are things that we are learning about them? What seems important? What am I learning about the problem? How does this chapter connect to what you read earlier? Now, this is the important question. Make sure you write it in your notebook. How does the setting of the story affect what happens to the sisters so far? Use details from the text to support your response. Okay, boys and girls, this is the end of chapter 7. Next is chapter 8.